What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2, and we're talking with Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, just pick up where you left off.
Well, it also came out, I think there's an article on RBN talking about how Susan Rice, on $172,000 a year salary, amassed a $50 million fortune.
Yeah.
Then we have Jared Kushner, who is, of course, subverting virtually everything going on in the White House, who's funded all the settlers in the West Bank for, giving them tons of money. Goldman Sachs and all that, he's allowed to help take over, the Trump administration. Then George Soros, you know what he's doing and who he's funded by and what his sympathies are. Then there's Haim Saban, who was next to George Soros, was the biggest funder of the Democratic Party. And, where does all this point, Mike?
Well, it points to the money powers in control of our nation. We have oligarchs in this country, the same way the Soviet Union did, and they're calling all the shots. And it is another reminder that, when individuals get too much money, they tend to do bad things. And they start to act like they're in charge of the government, and they're not supposed to be. The people are supposed to ultimately have the final say what wars we go into. And the reality is that we, the people, are not getting the government we vote for or pay for. It's a raw deal. We're voting in rigged elections, and we're paying for a government that's designed to serve the oligarchs.
Well, Mike, I'll tell you, I follow this stuff pretty closely, as you know, and I know you do. But you got to go a ways. You go past the Koch brothers. It's tough to find oligarchs that are as prominent as the ones that come out of the neocon Israeli firster mob. It's tough to find any as big, or there certainly aren't as many. So I just wanted to make that point.
Well, it's a valid point to make. What can I tell you? Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you. We're going to let you go. We're going to take a call from Keith in Montana, and then we're going to close the line so I can get some of this other news done. Keith, what's on your mind?
Mike, did you get that email I sent you earlier about James Lilly?
I'm not sure. I don't remember it.
Well, I sent it earlier this morning here. But anyway, I was listening to William Engo, reporter, longtime reporter, and like that. But anyway, he was quoting a few things that I'd never heard before like that, so I thought I would pass along to you. But in it, he said that if Korea didn't exist, they would have invented it. And
yeah, okay.
And I thought that was I thought that was kind of interesting because of the fact of, and also the fact that he is one of these Yale guys, and I don't know if he's related to Skull and Bones stuff or what, It was just, I just thought it was kind of interesting, as far as that,
Okay, well, I'm not seeing your email here, so you may need to resend it. Things are very flaky on the Internet these days. I think possibly by design here. Yeah, but what we're seeing is I think Americans are finally waking up and realizing that this country is not run the way the Constitution and the Bill of Rights describes, or how we were taught it was being run when we were in those state-controlled schools. And the whole government has become a big racket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you for the phone call.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, we're going to let you go here and get back to the news. Had a little problem there with that phone connection. All righty. Now, do you remember back when that whole situation in Ukraine started to crank on up, the U.S. went on in and staged a coup d'etat to get rid of the elected President Yanukovych because he favored realigning Ukraine with Russia. And the Western interests wanted Ukraine and its resources brought into the European Union, so they had one more country to suck dry to please the European Central Bank. And they put in Poroshenko, at which point Crimea seceded. and merged with the Russian republics, and now we have the Eastern Ukrainian republics that are trying to break away because they don't want to live in a country with a government that they didn't choose for themselves. And it was during that time where Russia had contracted with France to build these helicopter carrier ships, the Mistrals. And under U.S. pressure, France canceled the deal. Russia had already paid for the ships. They'd already been built. And the U.S. called up France and said, don't deliver them. And France said, yes, massa, yes, massa, yes, massa. And it was a big political stink. And finally, France sold those ships to Egypt. Well, Egypt is now making a deal with Russia to finish fitting out the Mistrals because France built the hulls, the engines, and all the basic ship components, but Russia was going to install its own, obviously superior electronic warfare radar defense systems, and now Egypt is going to be getting those systems from Russia directly. So, just very complicated deal all around. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates, just now rejoining our network. Over at the United Nations, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories, Michael Link, is saying this 50-year occupation has been profoundly corrosive of human rights and democratic values, and I'm sure that Netanyahu is already up there screaming, you're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, you hate the Jews, you want Hitler to come back and gas Jewish babies in the ovens. But it has been a 50-year occupation. And I wish the representatives at the United Nations had the courage to actually follow the rules here, because Israel's membership in the United Nations is unique in that it had conditions placed on it. And the first condition was a Palestinian right to return to their homes and villages taken from them during the creation of Israel. The second requirement was that if the Palestinians chose not to return, that Israel would financially compensate them for their lost homes and businesses. Israel has not complied with either one of those conditions. Israel should be kicked out of the United Nations. But Israel is a master at corrupting politicians around the world. We've certainly seen it with our own politicians here, and they've corrupted the politicians at the United Nations. This little tiny country wields tremendous influence, and they hold themselves as being above the law. They have nuclear weapons. They will not sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They will not allow IAEA inspections. They're always ready to point the fingers at other people. They claimed that Iraq was building nuclear weapons under their power station at Osirak, went in and bombed it. Inspectors looking at the ruins of the power station found, ta-da, a power station. There was no hidden bomb factory under the Iraqi power station the way there is underneath the Dimona reactor inside Israel. And, of course, Israel has been screaming that Iran is within 6 months of a nuclear bomb going back to the 1980s. People should stop listening to them. Look at all the liars we have in our corporate media and our government. The ones in Israel are more brazen. And speaking of brazen lies in the corporate media, a story coming out claiming Trump's poll numbers rise for every bomb he drops. And they're citing poll numbers saying Trump's approval is going up. Every time he kills innocent children and blows up useless targets, his poll numbers go on up. And, of course, you need to keep in mind, these are the same polls that told us Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide. And you need to remember there are two kinds of polls in use by government and corporate media. There are the internal polls that attempt to honestly assess what people are thinking and feeling. Then there are the so-called external polls. These are the polls that are crafted to be made public, and they're not designed to measure popular opinion. They're designed to manufacture it, relying on the herd instinct of you, the sheeple, to go along with whatever the corporate media tells you everybody else thinks is a really good idea. What they're really hoping is that if you are constantly being told the vast majority of the American people think World War III is a nifty idea, that you'll just shut up and say, oh, all right, well, if the rest of America wants it. You need to learn to be your own person. If somebody puts out a poll saying that the best way to deal with the failing pension system is to jump off a building, and 95% of senior citizens agree with that, is that going to compel you to go on up and jump off a tall building? It shouldn't. And over in the government and the media, they're feeling the pressure. They are aware they have lost the trust and faith of the American people. And they did it to themselves. The U.S. government has a huge credibility problem of their own making, and I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. So apparently, over at the Department of Homeland Security, John Kelly is apparently just sick and tired of the criticism and has basically come out with a statement saying, shut up, be terrified, and do what you're told. And he's saying, if it weren't for us, you would have already been killed by Saddam's nukes and the terrorists and the drug cartels and the rest of it. So, and we're what's keeping you safe. So just shut up about the criticism. Basically what John Kelly is doing, he's standing in the middle of town, whirling his arms around wildly. Somebody comes up and says, what are you doing? He says, I'm keeping the wild elephants away, of course. The other person says, there are no wild elephants within 5,000 miles of here. Kelly says, see, I'm doing a good job. So stop complaining about me blocking traffic by standing in the middle of the street waving my arms around. That's basically what he said. CNN is now out there trying to lay the blame for the Cleveland shooter on video games. Oh, it's all the fault of those video games. We seem to see this every 5 or 6 years. Blame the video games. I still want to know if this Cleveland shooter was on prescription antidepressants, because there is a demonstrable link between these brain-altering medications and senseless acts of violence. Almost all of the mass shooters that the gun grabbers wag at us were either on or withdrawing from these medications. We don't know about the more recent ones because the government has taken to withholding the medical information about the shooter. The shooter has privacy rights. It's privacy rights here. The guy's dead. I don't think he needs to worry about privacy anymore. Well, we're respecting his privacy rights. And we're not going to tell you if he was on these medications. I remember after Sandy Hook, when some people in Connecticut wanted to find out what medications Adam Lanza was on, and the attorney for the medical examiner's office was in the meeting arguing against releasing the information, and he made this ridiculous statement saying, even if in this one case the medication led him to commit these acts of violence, that's not important for people to know because they'll stop taking the medicines prescribed by their doctors. Well, Patrick was wrong because it's not in this one case. If you go over to ssristories.org, there's a lot of them. But Connecticut's economy is very heavily dependent on large pharmaceutical corporations, and that's the real motive there. We can't tell you the products are dangerous. You might decide to stop buying them, and then where would we be? Getting on back to the media. Another story out of Fort Russ talking about the fall of journalism ethics and standards in the corporate press. And yes, we've all been seeing it. Now, when I was in college, as is usual, you're required to take certain courses outside your major. And so I signed up for Journalism 101, got to pretend I was a reporter, and learned the basics of what was considered proper journalism. Multiple sources, confirmation, verify your facts, make sure the spelling is correct. And today, the media is just out there just saying whatever they feel like. And I think a good example of that is the New York Times has gone on the attack against those of us who know that the story that Assad gassed his people is just nonsense. And they can't refute our argument. that it just doesn't make any sense here. So they're resorting to insulting anybody who doubts the story. They're trying to mock us. Oh, you silly tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theory kooks. Of course Assad gassed his own people. Yes, we understand we can't figure out a motive for him to do something that stupid, but really, you're just a nutcase, for even daring to doubt the government and the corporate media here. That's not going to get any traction, I think, with the American people. And apparently, the Washington Post has come out with an article looking back at the November election and saying that the only reason Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton is because all the racists got out there and voted. Well, over at the Washington Compost, if any of you are listening here, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are both white. So it really doesn't make any sense. I think for a large part of the American people, like myself, it wasn't so much that they wanted to support Trump. They wanted to prevent Hillary from getting that White House. And yes, as disappointing as Donald Trump is, it would have been worse with Hillary. We would already be seeing the mushroom clouds at this point. Now, Representative Jason Chaffetz, who has been one of the bright lights in terms of trying to investigate all the nefarious activity going on, is apparently deciding to leave politics, or he's been convinced to leave politics. He's not going to seek re-election. And he was one of the major figures on the investigation of Hillary's use of a private email server for official classified government work. And he has been persuaded to leave politics now. It's an ugly system, ugly system. So my nickel, given that the Washington, D.C. itself cannot correct itself, isn't interested in correcting itself. They love things the way they are. It's a sociopath's heaven over there in Sodom on the Potomac. So I am still looking more and more at private citizens who are trying to get to the bottom of all this stuff. And Judicial Watch, go Judicial Watch, has filed a complaint with the House Office of Congressional Ethics calling for an investigation into whether Representatives Adam Schiff and Jackie Speer disclosed classified information to the public in violation of House ethics rules. Judicial Watch is also suing the State Department and USAID for records about the funding and political activities of George Soros Open Society Foundation. So go Judicial Watch. If I were an attorney, I would love to work for them, or for Larry Klayman's Freedom Watch. Get out there and shake the trees, as it were. Now, do you remember when it first came on out, the accusation that GCHQ had spied on the Trump campaign and then just handed the information over to U.S. intelligence agencies, Barack Obama, who shared it with the Hillary campaign and everything, and how GCHQ got up and just said, how dare you even suggest such a thing? Of course we would not engage in such an obvious spying on a political campaign here. It's insulting that you even suggest it. Well, when they react with the how dare you defense, it's usually a signal that you're on to something. And apparently, GCHQ is now having to admit, yeah, they were listening to Donald Trump's phone calls and sharing the information back with the Obama administration. Golly gee shuckies, you caught us. And is our face red? We're really embarrassed. We're really, we're really chagrined. No, they aren't. They're ashamed they got caught. People who work in intelligence or politics, they have no shame. It's surgically removed as part of the job requirement. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, remember when all of this started coming on out, that the Obama administration had been spying on Donald Trump and his family and his campaign associates, and they tried to justify it saying, there was this evidence of a Russian connection, that they were talking with Russian intelligence, And they tried to claim it was all legal because they had a FISA warrant. And it's now come on out that the entire case presented to the Foreign Intelligence Service Court by James Comey was that BuzzFeed fake dossier that said Trump and 2 prostitutes had done weird things in the presidential suite of the Moscow Hotel. And it turned out to be completely bogus. And amazingly enough, most of the corporate media decided the story couldn't be supported, and they ignored it. Even in their efforts to get Trump, they said this is obviously not true. It was written by a former MI5 spy, and somebody paid him to do all of this, and it was just completely discredited. Yet that was the entire case that Comey took to the FISA court to get a warrant from them to make it look like the spying on Donald Trump's campaign was legal and above board. And it wasn't. All righty. Now then, apparently, as you know, there's a runoff election in Georgia, and it almost got thrown to the wrong candidate. And they're now saying that there was a data error from one of the voting cards, and in this case they mean a memory card. And somebody said, this isn't adding up, the checksums aren't there, and they went back and they had to go through hundreds of cards to find the culprit. And once they found the card, they continued the election. But had this gone undetected, it could have handed the election to the wrong person. But it's just a mechanical failure. It's just a goof. It's a glitch, really. I think we need an election system that is designed not to have these glitches, to be completely transparent and verifiable, which I've written up an outline about. We've put it out there. And I've gotten emails from other countries saying, actually, that's how we've been doing our elections. We got rid of those electronic machines. We're looking at massive election fraud in Turkey, massive election fraud here in the United States of America. Our democracy is an illusion. So that no matter what the government does, start World War III, authorize testing of new medicines and drugs on us without our knowledge and permission, which they just got done doing. Somebody complains, they can say, well, you know, you voted for this. What we vote for is always the lesser of two evils. And it's still evil, and it's a stupid way to run a country here. Now, there's a new book out, and it's basically confirming a story we heard earlier, that Hillary Clinton, showing symptoms of her extreme paranoia, was spying on her own staff during the 2008 campaign, especially after she lost. And she was out there to find who had been plotting against her. They're plotting against, my staffers are against me. She was looking for people who were just saying bad things, they're disloyal, or people who've been leaking information. All right, let's talk about the economic news because it's getting wild out there. Trump has issued a trade warning to Canada and is basically saying it's another typical one-sided deal against the United States and it's not going to be happening for long. And apparently, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is upset with the way trade with Canada is going. And I think that's an artifact of governments getting on in and tinkering and messing with trade. Remember, we're always told about it's a free trade agreement, it's a free trade agreement. Well, if you've got free trade, you don't need an agreement. These agreements are all about forcing other countries to buy things they don't really want, like our GMO agriculture. That was a central feature to the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. And look what a mess they've made of the economies of the world. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we've got a story that's coming on out now. And it started in The Guardian. And basically, it is now confirmed former CIA Director John Brennan colluded with British and Estonian spies to manufacture a Trump Russia tie to destroy Trump's candidacy. Now, there's something to think about when you're looking at manufactured fraudulent evidence. If you have real evidence, you don't need to manufacture fraudulent evidence, and in fact, it's dangerous to do so. Because if there's any fraudulent evidence that's uncovered, it discredits everything, including the real facts. So the two are mutually exclusive. If we have confirmation they were manufacturing evidence of a Russia-Trump tie, that tells us there was no Russia-Trump tie, and that's important to keep in mind. I was looking back at that story from the caller about the USS Ronald Reagan, and it was contaminated at Fukushima, and the sailors got sick, and it's basically been hushed up. The media doesn't talk about it. But the story about, remember, the Carl Vinson, and they were talking about the Nimitz and the Reagan sailing to North Korea. Well, the Reagan, it's kind of hard to use right now. If you're on it for too long, you get very, very sick. And they were saying, the article that from rents.com, which we put up at whatreallyhappened.com, is saying that they could just sail it over there and sink it off the coast of North Korea and make our radioactive waste problem their radioactive waste problem, which, of course, is part of the thinking behind depleted uranium munitions, because depleted uranium is a toxic radioactive leftover from building bomb stuff, and it's piling up, and it's part of our nuclear waste problem. So by turning it into ammunition and shooting the rest of the world with it, we're making our radioactive waste problem their radioactive waste problem. And everywhere those depleted uranium munitions are being used, the result is horrific, massive birth defects, not just in the people in those countries, but among our own service people who are exposed to those weapons. Now, thinking about how badly the U.S. needs some kind of a false flag to get Americans back on the war path, it makes sense to me they're going to sail or possibly tow the Ronald Reagan off the coast of North Korea. Then it will be sunk by a U.S. submarine or fired on by a U.S. ship, and they'll claim North Korea staged an unprovoked attack on the Ronald Reagan and sank it with all hands. We must go to war here. Remember the Reagan. Remember the Maine. They claimed that was sunk by a Spanish mine, triggering the Spanish-American War. The captain of the USS Maine, in his report, said the ship was destroyed when an onboard fire touched off the ammunition magazine. And President McKinley and William Randolph Hearst said, obviously the captain doesn't know what he's talking about. It was clearly a Spanish mine, and they were off to war. And then years later, Admiral Hyman G. Rickover, the father of America's nuclear navy, conducted a review of the evidence and came to the conclusion Captain Sigsbee had been correct. There had been an onboard fire. The ammunition magazine had gone off. There was no Spanish mine. All wars are started with lies, fraud, and deception. Can you imagine what would happen if a ruler stands up and says, I think we're going to invade this other country over there. They got a lot of very valuable materials and things that I want, and we're going to send your children over there, and yes, some of them are going to be killed and crippled, but it is a sacrifice I am willing to make. And then you will bring all that wealth back for me and my friends, and we'll all have a really good time. What would be the result? The people would stand up and say, no, we don't want a war. War is dangerous, dirty work. You have to leave your loved ones and travel long distances, and there is a serious risk that you're going to lose important parts of your body. So every president who wants to, every ruler, everywhere in the world who wants to start a war has to commit an act of fraud against their people to make it look like war is their only choice. And we're already hearing Donald Trump out there saying, we have no choice, we have no choice. Yeah, we do. I remember there was an episode on the original Star Trek where the Enterprise was trying to calm a war down here, and one of the people was saying to Captain Kirk, well, looking at the weapons on your starship, obviously you come from a killer race as well. And he says, yes, we do. But we can decide not to kill. That's all it is. We get up and say, today I am not going to kill anybody. All right, we're going to go back and take a phone call. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, we just haven't heard anything about the unmasking and the spying that the Obama administration committed on Trump. And it's a scam. Why has that gone to the back burner?
Because the more warlike Trump becomes, the more he falls in line with the globalists and the war party. They're now calling up their media assets and say, stop attacking him.
Yeah, they suck. We're done. I mean, I don't see any future in this. Do you see a future for this?
We're going to lose this one. I'm sorry, we are. You know, the conventional wisdom is America's never lost a war. Of course, we lost in Vietnam, and we didn't win in North Korea. And the fact of the matter is, contrary to the movies and TV shows about World War I and World War II, we did not win those all by ourselves. In fact, in both cases, we waited until we could see which side was eventually going to win, and we hopped on the winning side.
Yeah. I heard Julian Assange the other day. He was interviewed by Amy Goodwin of Democracy Now! And one thing that he said about Trump is at least Trump has brought to the forefront the fact that there is a deep state and that basically the president's not in charge of anything.
Yeah, that's now very, very obvious. We're ruled by the oligarchs. We're ruled by the Sheldon Adelsons and the George Soroses and the Bill Gates. Anybody with way, way too much money starts thinking they're a god and should be in charge of the country.
Yeah, it's sad that, I mean, we have to at least look at that positive side of this, and that's what Julian Assange says, at least that's brought to the forefront, and he was saying he really appreciates it, and so do I.
I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying, yeah, you're right to say it isn't just Donald Trump, it's the system. I don't think Donald Trump was lying all last year on the campaign trail. I think he has been gotten to somehow. Maybe his life has been threatened along with the lives of all of his families. He's been shown the Zapruder film and told, yes, we can kill uncooperative presidents and get away with it. Or, there is a rumor, and I stress it is only a rumor, that when Trump was down at Jeff Epstein's little pleasure island in the Caribbean, that he was caught on videotape doing something incredibly icky.
Yeah. Do you think that he actually went down to the island?
Oh, yeah, it's confirmed that he went.
Well,
he's good friends with Epstein. He's good friends with Epstein.
That's guilt, Mike. That's guilt. What are you doing there?
You're being
Serious.
stupid.
I mean,
you're being stupid to walk into a place like that and not know that it is going to be wired and video cameras all over the place. We all see how tiny video cameras are now. They're incredibly small and hard to find. If you need to, you can buy little devices now that will help you spot a hidden camera. If you travel a lot and you're afraid of somebody trying to compromise you, you should be using one of those. They're not expensive. You can find them on eBay. But it really is. It is a real mess. And anybody who's been to Epstein's Island is showing a high degree of recklessness.
Yeah, he's guilty. If you went there, you're guilty.
Well,
I'm sorry. Why are you there?
Again, it's only a rumor, and it may be possible that people have gone to Jeff Epstein's Island to actually talk business with Jeff Epstein, and they just sort of, it's a very beautiful place. I've looked at it in Google Earth, and they may have swum in the pool and worked on their tan on the deck. It's certainly a very private place. We don't know that everybody who went there availed themselves of the young girls. But it certainly would be very foolish for somebody to go down there and do that. But again, I stress this is only a rumor. But in the end, it doesn't matter how Donald Trump was turned. What's important is he's been turned, and he's now a creature of the deep state. And that means we are all in serious, serious trouble.
Yeah, it sucks. It just sucks. I like Putin. I hate to say it. I think Putin's an honorable statesman, and I can appreciate him standing up to the corruption of the United States government and their allies. Hate to say that. That's what it is. Hopefully he'll have enough resistance to continue to allow the people of the earth to see who the real villains are, and it's us and our allies.
No, it's the oligarchs. It's the money junkies. It always has been. That's the whole point of my article, All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. It's the money junkies who are corrupting our planet.
Yeah, it's so sad that's what we're in. This is a state. We need the people to stand up, though. The only way it's going to be stopped is if the people stand up and say, no, we're not going to believe that crap anymore. Okay. We've believed it for too long, and we don't believe it anymore, and it's time to put some people in jail, and we need to have some Nuremberg trials. It's what we need right now.
I absolutely agree with you. Unfortunately, while this current government remains in power, they will never eat their own. But following a Soviet Union-style collapse or following losing World War III, I'm certainly going to want tickets to the resulting trials.
Me too. Hey, Mike, thank you a bunch for all your work, and let's hope something good can turn out of something. Let's hope that someone can come up with a video that proves that the United States is quite evil.
I don't think you need a video. The United States is seen as evil by pretty much the rest of the planet, except, of course, for Israel, which sees us as their slave.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Israel, the United States. Even, Britain left. Brexit left the UK, but like England and stuff, I don't know. It's all corrupted.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Alex, going to let you go. We're going to move over to Frank in London. Frank, thank you for being patient. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I think, first of all, I know you've heard of a buffoon we have over here in London by the name of Boris Johnson.
Yes.
This guy, I think there should be a subject created called buffoonology in honor of this man, because this guy, it's not just that he's a buffoon, he's a dangerous buffoon. And that's regard to his latest statement. Not only that, he proudly said that we supply Saudi Arabia with ammunition. I mean, these people, the guy is a complete clown, but a dangerous one. A buffoon, a clown could be a smart person, but Boris Johnson is a complete buffoon. I don't know if he feels that he's fading into political irrelevance. I don't know, but guys, he's absolutely, I think he should be put in a straitjacket.
Well, he's not irrelevant. He's currently the foreign minister, if I understand correctly, and he's out there talking about literally ignoring the parliamentary vote against British involvement in Syria. And, the British government has never recovered from the lies that got them into Iraq, the dodgy dossier and the Downing Street memo and all the rest of it. And here we are going again. We're going to send the British military into Syria on the basis of this absolutely ridiculous claim that Assad gassed his own people at Idlib. Because the story just doesn't make sense. And they've tried it before, 2013, 2014, and it was a lie. It was exposed as a lie by the United Nations.
Yep, and he intends to do it now without the consent of the British public.
Yeah, well, that's... I have a recommendation. I've had the very great joy of being in London. I was there many, many years ago working with a production company. And I had one day to do a whirlwind tour of London, and I did visit the Tower of London. And I remember that large wooden block with all those dark brown stains on it. It's still there. And I would keep an eye on that. It may become useful in the near future.
Yeah, well, excellent recommendation. Okay, Mike, thanks.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. It's just disgusting when you hear about now with the possibility that he was with Epstein and the Epstein's Island there. This doesn't seem any hope anymore. We're so surrounded by corruption. So here's what I would do. Okay, I would absolutely support. And I know some people will say I'm sound like a traitor, but I'm not, because I would have a amendment to the Constitution, a temporary amendment to the Constitution, and let's let Vladimir Putin run for president of the United States. Once he's finished with Russia, that he'd run for president of the United States by 2020. And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't even mind if Bashar al-Assad ran for vice president, because I think both of these men are honorable men. We don't have very courageous men. We don't have anybody of the sort right now in our country. I thought Trump would be one, but he's not. We have nothing but garbage, absolute garbage.
Well, there's only one flaw with your suggestion, and that is that both Putin and Assad are way too smart to want to take on all of this country's problems. You know, they've got enough of their own problems in Syria and Russia, and I'm sure after they're both out of office, they're going to be thinking seriously about retiring and relaxing for a bit. But right now, the United States is in such a terrible condition. I can't imagine anybody really wanting the job, knowing the problems they're going to deal with, especially after what we've seen the oligarchs do to Donald Trump. And I'm still convinced Donald Trump meant well during the campaign, but as I said, during the campaign and even after his election and inauguration, he went into that White House as dangerously naive about the realities of D.C. politics as Jimmy Carter. Carter was never prepared for what the deep state did to him. He was absolutely blindsided. And Trump is exactly the same.
Well, as far as Putin goes, this guy is almost superhuman. I mean, the guy is well in his 60s. He probably could whip most people's behind half his age and less than half his age, and he is a very healthy guy, and he's got a superior mind. Yeah, I think he'd be able to do it.
He's the only adult in the pantheon of world leaders right now. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to go with Stephen in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, it's going to be real quick, Mike. Back in 2007, I kind of had this all figured out, and there were some people that I told that listened, and they didn't lose. They didn't make a ton of money, but they didn't lose their fortunes. And the ones that didn't. And I just want to tell you, right now, I'm feeling a deja vu. I am feeling the smell in the air of the exact same thing that happened in 2007. So I just wanted to share that with you, and people tell you, except for it's going to be a little different this time.
Well, it's different because in 2007 it was the subprime mortgages, and now it's the subprime auto loans. Plus, complicating things is the student loan default rate. It is a mess, and right now our entire economic system is a fairy tale, wishful thinking. After we finish these phone calls, we're going to get back to the economic news.
All right, thank you very much, but I'm just going to let you know that I see all the same things you're seeing, and I just thought I'd pitch in.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch to John in Chicago. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Well, I know daily, as you know, you watch the news, you have your talking points and things, and what I want you to start inserting into your keep on your watch, you're going to have to watch this alt-right versus the Antifa stuff. We don't need a bunch of young 20-somethings going out to college campuses and killing each other. I mean, you saw what happened in Berkeley, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. They tried to do it again in Auburn last night. I watched like half an hour of that Richard Spencer guy. That guy couldn't inspire a starving dog to eat after a tornado. That guy, he's foul-mouthed. His conjecture is horrible. He's not inspiring anybody. But the fact that we have these young 20-somethings that show up at these states, they're just like Black Lives Matter, and then they get fisticuffs or they get violent. You know, who did 9/11? This is, if all these people want to direct their anger at something, direct it at who did 9/11. Is Trump doing anything about who did 9/11? All the wars are because of 9/11. Wesley Clark and everything. 9/11 was the catalyst to kick off all these wars. And all these young 20-somethings don't know any better. So for them to get bussed in and then start fisticuffing or throwing M80s at each other over domestic ideologies, this is only going to increase the police state. And God forbid one moron brings a gun to one of these riots, we're all going to lose our Second Amendment.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what is the real agenda. I mean, certainly earlier in the week at Berkeley, the Antifa demonstrators were screaming about Donald Trump's tax returns. And frankly, I'm much more interested in Hillary Clinton's deleted emails than I am in Donald Trump's tax returns. And it's almost like they're being paid to cause violence, but they're running out of reasons to do so because Donald Trump is now going along with the New World Order globalist neocon agenda. And probably they're screaming about his tax returns because they can't think of anything else.
Well, and if these alt-right Trump supporters don't know any better that Trump is going in lockstep, what good are they doing?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. John, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We got to do station identification.